I stood in my kitchen in Portland, Oregon, staring at the perfectly golden souffle I'd just pulled from the oven. The rain tapped against the windows, typical November weather. But inside, everything felt warm and right. That is, until my husband Marcus walked in. "What's that supposed to be?" he asked, barely glancing at my creation before opening the fridge. "It's a maple bourbon souffle," I said, trying to keep the pride out of my voice. "I've been working on this recipe for weeks." Marcus grabbed a beer and leaned against the counter, his tie loosened after another long day at his tech company. "Sarah, we've been over this. Cooking isn't your thing. Why don't you focus on something you're actually good at?" The words stung, even though I'd heard variations of them for the past 3 years of our marriage. When we first met at a food festival in downtown Portland, Marcus had loved my passion for cooking. But somewhere along the way, his encouragement had turned into dismissal. "I made this for you," I said quietly, placing the souffle on our dining table. "I thought we could have a nice dinner together." He glanced at his watch. "I've got a conference call with Singapore in 20 minutes. Just order something if you're hungry." I watched him disappear into his home office, the door clicking shut behind him. The souffle sat there, deflating slowly, much like my spirits. I was 32 years old, working as a graphic designer from home, and somehow I'd become invisible in my own marriage. My phone buzzed. It was my best friend Jennifer. "How'd the souffle turn out?" Her text read. "Perfect. Marcus didn't even try it," I typed back. 3 dots appeared then. "Sarah, you need to stop letting him do this to you. Your food is incredible." Jennifer had been my cheerleader since college. She ran a small cafe in the Pearl District and had been begging me for years to let her feature some of my recipes. But Marcus always said it would be embarrassing if I failed publicly. That evening, after Marcus had finished his call and gone to bed without touching the dinner I'd prepared, I sat alone at my laptop. The house was quiet except for the rain and the occasional creak of old pipes. Our craftsman-style home in the Irvington neighborhood had seemed so perfect when we bought it, but lately, it felt more like a beautiful cage. I opened my email and found a message from Jennifer sent earlier that day. She'd forwarded me something, a casting call for a new cooking competition show called Home Chef Heroes. The show was looking for amateur cooks with unique recipes to compete for a $50,000 grand prize. "You should apply," Jennifer had written. "I'm serious, Sarah. You're better than half the people I see on these shows." I read through the requirements. Applicants needed to submit a video showcasing their signature dish and explaining what cooking meant to them. The deadline was in 3 days. I looked at the deflated souffle still sitting on the table and made a decision. Maybe it was time to prove, if only to myself, that I could do this. The next morning, Marcus left early for a meeting in Seattle and wouldn't be back until late. I had the whole day to myself, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called Jennifer. "I'm going to apply for that cooking show." Her squeal nearly deafened me. "Yes, finally! What are you going to make?" "My grandmother's recipe," I said, feeling a warmth spread through my chest, the one she taught me when I was 10. My grandmother, Elena, had emigrated from Italy to New York before eventually settling in Oregon. Her recipe for what she called amore e limone, a lemon ricotta pasta with herbs from her garden, had been passed down through 3 generations. It was the dish that had first made me fall in love with cooking, standing on a step stool in her kitchen, learning to fold fresh pasta by hand. "That's perfect," Jennifer said. "Come to the cafe. We'll film it here. The lighting is great in the morning." 2 hours later, I stood in Jennifer's kitchen, my hands dusted with flour, talking to her phone camera as if I were sharing a secret with a friend. "Cooking has always been my way of showing love," I told the camera, my voice steadier than I expected. "When I make this dish, I feel connected to my grandmother, to my heritage, to everything that matters. Food isn't just sustenance, it's memory, it's comfort, it's home." As I demonstrated the recipe, something shifted inside me. My hands moved with confidence, creating the pasta dough, rolling it into thin sheets, preparing the delicate lemon ricotta filling. Jennifer filmed everything, occasionally giving me thumbs up from behind the camera. "You're a natural," she said when we finished. "This is going to blow them away." We submitted the application that afternoon. Then came the waiting. For the next 2 weeks, I went about my normal routine, designing logos for clients, preparing dinners that Marcus rarely appreciated, pretending everything was fine. But inside, something had awakened. I started cooking more adventurously, experimenting with flavors and techniques. I documented everything in a private journal, writing down recipes and modifications like a scientist recording experiments. Marcus noticed the increased cooking, but made his usual comments. Another fancy dish nobody asked for? Or, we could just eat normal food, right? I stopped trying to get his approval. Instead, I cooked for myself, for the joy of it, sometimes bringing extras to Jennifer's cafe where customers actually appreciated the effort. Then, on a gray December morning, the email arrived. "Dear Sarah Martinez," it began. "Congratulations! You've been selected as one of 20 competitors for Home Chef Heroes. Filming will begin in January in Los Angeles." My hands shook as I read the details. They wanted me. They actually wanted me. Jennifer screamed so loud when I called her that her customers looked alarmed. I told you! When are you going to tell Marcus?" That was the question, wasn't it? Part of me wanted to prove myself first, to show up with the prize money and say, "See, I can cook." But I knew I had to tell him. That evening, I made his favorite meal, steak with roasted vegetables, and waited for him to come home. The Portland skyline twinkled in the distance, visible from our dining room window. Rain streaked the glass, creating patterns of light and shadow. Marcus arrived at 8, later than usual. He looked exhausted, his hair damp from the rain. "We need to talk," I said as he hung up his coat. He sighed. "Can it wait? I've had a brutal day." "No, it can't." I gestured to the table where I'd set out dinner. "Sit, please." Something in my tone made him comply. He sat down, loosening his tie, looking at me with a mixture of concern and irritation. "I've been selected for a cooking competition show," I said, the words tumbling out. "It's called Home Chef Heroes. Filming starts in January. The grand prize is $50,000. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. Not a happy laugh, but a condescending one that made my stomach twist. "You're joking," he said. "I'm completely serious. I applied, they loved my recipe, and I'm going to compete." His expression hardened. "Sarah, be realistic. Do you know how many people apply for these shows? How competitive they are? You're going to embarrass yourself on national television." "Maybe," I said, surprised by my own calm. "But I'm going to try, with or without your support." We sat in silence, the tension thick enough to cut. Finally, Marcus shook his head. "Fine, do what you want. But don't expect me to be there picking up the pieces when this falls apart." January in Los Angeles was a shock to my Portland-accustomed system. Sunshine, palm trees, and warm weather felt almost surreal as I checked into the hotel where the production had arranged accommodations for all contestants. The first day of filming was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The studio was massive, with 20 fully equipped cooking stations arranged in rows. Cameras were everywhere, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes. The host, celebrity chef David Romano, was even more charismatic in person than on television. "Welcome, home chefs," he announced as we all stood at our stations. "Over the next 6 weeks, you'll compete in challenges designed to test your creativity, technique, and passion. Each week, we'll eliminate contestants until only one remains. That person will win $50,000 and the title of Home Chef Hero." I looked around at my competition. There was Maria from Texas, who specialized in barbecue, James from Boston, whose seafood dishes were supposed to be incredible, and Ashley from Nashville, a baker whose desserts looked like works of art. Everyone seemed so confident, so professional. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Jennifer. "You've got this. Remember why you're there." The first challenge was to create a dish that represented home. I immediately thought of my grandmother's pasta, but I needed to elevate it, to make it competition-worthy. I worked with an intensity I'd never felt before, my hands moving automatically as I prepared fresh pasta, whipped the ricotta filling with lemon zest and fresh herbs, and created a delicate sauce infused with white wine and butter. The studio buzzed with activity, the clatter of pans, the hiss of searing meat, the murmur of worried conversations. When time was called, I looked down at my plate. It wasn't just food, it was a piece of my heart. The judges, Chef Romano and 2 other culinary experts, moved from station to station. When they reached mine, I held my breath. Chef Romano took a bite, his eyes closed. For a moment that felt like an eternity, he said nothing. Then he looked at me. "This," he said slowly, "is exceptional. The pasta is perfectly made, the filling is balanced and bright, and there's so much love in this dish that I can taste it. Well done, Sarah." I made it through the first round, then the second, then the third. Each week brought new challenges, creating a dish with only 5 ingredients, preparing a 3-course meal in 90 minutes, cooking with mystery ingredients from a locked box. Some weeks I struggled, barely avoiding elimination. Other weeks I soared, my dishes earning praise from judges who seemed genuinely moved by my food. I called Marcus after each episode filmed, but our conversations grew shorter and more strained. He never asked about the competition, never showed interest in how I was doing. Jennifer, on the other hand, texted me constantly with encouragement and watched every moment of filming when she could visit the set. By week 5, only 5 of us remained. The competition had been brutal. I'd watched talented cooks break down in tears, seen friendships form and rivalries develop. But I'd also discovered something about myself. I belonged here. This wasn't just a dream or a hobby. This was who I was meant to be. The semi-final challenge was announced. Create a dish that represents your journey, something that shows who you were and who you've become. I knew immediately what I would make, but it wouldn't be easy. The final challenge was the most intense thing I'd ever experienced. Cameras everywhere, a live studio audience of 200 people, and the weight of everything I'd worked for hanging in the balance. Only 3 of us had made it this far. Myself, Maria from Texas, and James from Boston. We had 3 hours to create a complete meal, appetizer, main course, and dessert, that represented our entire culinary journey. I started with my hands shaking, then found my rhythm. For my appetizer, I made a deconstructed version of my grandmother's pasta, presenting it as a crispy nest with the lemon ricotta filling as a smooth mousse garnished with micro basil and edible flowers. My main course was ambitious, a perfectly seared duck breast with a bourbon cherry reduction, roasted root vegetables, and a creamy polenta infused with parmesan and fresh thyme. It represented my growth, taking comfort food and elevating it with technique and confidence. For dessert, I created a maple panna cotta with a bourbon caramel sauce and candied pecans, a nod to Portland, to the Northwest, to the home I'd built, even when it didn't always feel like one. As I worked, I thought about Marcus, about all the times he'd dismissed me. But I also thought about Jennifer, about my grandmother, about every person who'd believed in me when I struggled to believe in myself. With 10 minutes remaining, I plated everything with hands that had stopped shaking. The dishes looked beautiful, restaurant quality, the judges would later say. Chef Romano called time. Step away from your stations. The next hour was a blur of judges tasting, deliberating, and asking questions. They praised Maria's bold flavors, James's technical precision, and my emotional resonance. Finally, all 3 of us stood at the front of the studio, the audience silent, cameras focused on our faces. The winner of Home Chef Heroes is... Chef Romano paused, building tension. Sarah Martinez! I heard the words, but they didn't seem real. Jennifer, who'd flown in to watch the finale, screamed from the audience. Confetti fell from the ceiling. Chef Romano handed me an oversized check for $50,000. You didn't just cook technically excellent food, he told me, his hand on my shoulder. You cooked with soul. Every dish told a story, and that's what makes a true chef. The celebration afterward was incredible. My fellow contestants congratulated me. The crew hugged me, and Jennifer wouldn't stop crying. But when I checked my phone, there was nothing from Marcus. I flew back to Portland the next day, the check carefully packed in my carry-on, feeling like a different person than the one who'd left 6 weeks earlier. Marcus was home when I arrived, working in his office as usual. I set my suitcase down in the hallway and walked to his door. I won, I said simply. He looked up from his computer, his expression unreadable. I saw. It was on social media. You didn't call. You didn't text. He sighed, closing his laptop. Sarah, I don't know what you want me to say. Congratulations? You proved me wrong? Is that what this was about? Proving something to me? No, I said, and I realized it was true. This was about proving something to myself. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man I'd spent 3 years trying to please, trying to impress, trying to be enough for, but I'd never been the problem. I'm going to use this money to do something for myself, I told him. Jennifer and I are going to open a restaurant, a real one, with my recipes, my vision, and I need to know, are you going to support me, or are you going to keep tearing me down? Marcus stood up, his face flushing. You can't be serious. A restaurant? Do you know how many restaurants fail in the first year? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're being unrealistic. Maybe, I said. But I'd rather try and fail doing something I love than spend another year being told I'm not good enough. The words hung between us. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. Finally, he said, "I think we need some space." "I think you're right," I replied. 3 months later, I stood in front of a small restaurant space in Portland's Alberta Arts District. The rain had stopped for once, and weak March sunshine filtered through the clouds. The building needed work, but I could see its potential. Exposed brick walls, large windows, enough space for 30 tables. Jennifer stood beside me, holding the lease agreement. "Are you sure about this?" I thought about everything that had happened. The competition, the divorce proceedings Marcus had initiated, the scary and exhilarating feeling of starting over at 32. But I also thought about the hundreds of messages I'd received from people who'd watched the show, telling me my food had inspired them, moved them, reminded them why they loved cooking. "I'm sure," I said. We signed the lease that afternoon. By summer, Elena's Table, named after my grandmother, opened its doors. The restaurant featured elevated comfort food with Italian influences, each dish a story, each plate a memory. On opening night, the restaurant was packed. Jennifer managed the front while I worked in the kitchen, my hands moving with the confidence I'd found in Los Angeles, creating dishes that made people feel something. My grandmother's recipe, the one that started everything, became our signature dish. When customers asked about it, our servers told them the story of a girl who learned to cook on a step stool, of a woman who was told she couldn't, of a chef who proved everyone wrong. Marcus sent a terse email congratulating me on the opening. I didn't respond. Some chapters close so new ones can begin. A year later, Elena's Table was thriving. We'd been featured in Portland Monthly, had a waiting list for reservations, and I'd been invited to compete on another cooking show, this time as a professional chef. Standing in my kitchen late one night after service, prepping for the next day, I thought about how far I'd come. The $50,000 had given me a start, but the real prize was discovering who I was when I stopped trying to be who someone else wanted me to be. My phone buzzed, a message from Jennifer. "Table 8 wants to meet the chef. They said it was the best meal of their lives." I wiped my hands on my apron and headed toward the dining room, ready to share another story, another moment of connection through food. Because that's what cooking had always been for me. Not just about the recipes or the techniques or even the recognition. It was about love, transformed into something you could taste, something that lingered long after the meal was over, something that reminded people they were worth caring for. And I'd finally learned to cook that way for myself too.